My name's Tom Place, this is Chasing Cars, and this is a highly modified Volkswagen Amarok. It's decked out in all sorts of accessories which you can buy at the dealership level. This one right here has got a 40mm lift kit, a snorkel, underbody protection, and an electric roller cover, plus much more. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you which accessories I think you should go for and others that aren't so crash hot. We're also going to look at some accessories which aren't on this vehicle, like a rooftop tent and a canopy system. And I'm also going to fill you in on some accessories which are coming but aren't here just yet. Now, here in Australia, we have an internationally renowned aftermarket industry, and it's great to see that Volkswagen, like many car makers, has started to realise that, and they worked closely on these accessories with those suppliers. And honestly, I think it really does show in some of the quality of the product here. Now, if you want a more traditional review of the Amarok, this isn't necessarily it. We do have some standalone reviews on a bunch of different models. Plus, if you go check out our off-road mega test, you'll see this Amarok pitted against some of the very best in the segment. Now, before we get stuck in today's video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below on your thoughts on this Amarok and its accessories, but also please go give us a follow on the socials.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Now, let's have a look at some of these accessories specifically, starting with the snorkel. And look, it is technically a raised air intake, but you do have a weighting depth of 800 mils by default before any other of the gubbins get fitted on. So it's pretty good to start with, I do think. In saying that, it is great to have a raised air intake when you're really going bush and you want to get some of that red dust away and out of your engine. On this one, we also have some full underbody protection. That's going to set you back $1,600, but as we'll talk about later on, I definitely think it's worth the extra investment. Now, as I said, we also have a 40mm lift kit on this one. It's been developed in collaboration with both Volkswagen and ARB suspension arm in Old Man Emu. It's a pretty good system, as we'll talk about later on, but having a look at it now, it really does give such a presence. It's going to set you back about $1,500 for the front axle and about $2,300 for the rear. But notably, they haven't just done a one-size-fits-all system. We have a separate system designed specifically for the heavier V6, and also if you do a lot of towing, it's good to know you can also get a separate one for the rear, which can handle about an extra 300 kilos of constant loading if you're pretty used to having a lot of weight on that tow ball. So fantastic to see there. Now, the thing I like about this 40mm lift kit is the fact that the Amarok has actually been engineered for these sort of modifications to be made. And I think 40mm hits a good balance. Don't know if you can see, but if you have a little bit of a pier between the wheel and the arches here, you'll see that the axles are at a pretty reasonable height here. You're not at too much of a crazy angle, and that means that when you take those full compressions, you know, those poor CV joints aren't going to take as much of a beating. Jumping into the interior for just a second, because I want to point out something that Volkswagen has changed for the 2024 model year, and that is the fact that they've made an integrated brake controller standard. I do like this control, actually. We've done a bit of towing with the car today, and it's nice and easy, nice and in reach, but also it doesn't look stupid and ugly. So great to see that, and it's also good that your partner can reach over and grab it if they need to. So nice work there from Volkswagen.
If you've already got an Amarok and want to get electric brake controller fitted, Volkswagen will install the system for $1,180, fitted and everything.
So what's it like to drive the Volkswagen Amarok fitted with the 40mm lift kit? Well, look, this has actually surprised me quite a bit, this kit. You know, like, I've driven some cars in the past which have been fitted with these sorts of systems, and it's generally not been a good impression. You know, they're kind of prone for being a little bit firm and a little bit unwieldy at the same time, which is kind of like the worst of both worlds. Of course, not all systems are like that. In fact, there's probably been a bit of a rise in recent years of aftermarket solutions which even surpass the stock suspension configuration despite having an extra lift on it. So, you know, that's exactly the sort of thing we like to see. And I really do think that Volkswagen and Old Man Emu have done a really good job here. You know, you've got this immediate lift, you know, better cabin presence and better visibility, obviously, but it doesn't come at a huge detriment to the driving experience. In fact, I'd say it's actually better in some respects. Yes, when you're doing a bit of a driving, off-center, it does seem to be a little bit more ponderous. You know, the body control isn't quite 100% off-center, but it does seem to be, for the vast majority of your turning range, it seems to be quite competent at holding onto that body control. And in fact, when we were going over some tricky bits of road that were really poorly finished at high speeds, we're talking about 100 k's an hour or so, I actually think it was an improvement over the stock suspension, which is saying something because the stock suspension on the Amarok is really quite good. Of course, when you start to push it to its extremes and the weight's sitting up high now after that lift, it's asking more of the tires and the control isn't going to be quite there at the limit. But that's probably not really where you should be driving the four-wheel drive anyway. But even still, look, it's reasonably competent. I'd just be more cautious at pushing it to those limits than I would in a stock Amarok. Now, we also had an opportunity to do a bit of towing with an Amarok fitted with this lift kit. I was in the V6, so naturally there's a little bit more weight over the nose. And look, overall, this was another good strong point for the kit, I think. I was towing an off-road caravan, so it was sitting a little bit higher just as the ute was sitting a little bit higher. So a bit of equilibrium going on there as far as down pressure on the tow ball. Now, notably, the lift kit that I had on mine didn't have the 300 kilograms of constant loading factored into the rear axle of the suspension setup. But even still, I felt it was fairly competent. 3.1 tons is a lot of weight though, and I think I would recommend that anyone who is doing a bit of towing and they're pulling more than 2.5 tons to go for that optional extra, which has that extra 300 kilograms of constant loading factored in. Yes, there's probably going to be a bit of a trade-off in terms of ride comfort, but I do think the payoff in terms of stability is going to be worth your while. I will quickly note that we also had an opportunity to tow with a 2.8 ton van with the non-lift kit and with the bi-turbo engine. And I do think that there is a bit of an advantage going for the V6. I mean, it's obvious, everyone always says go for the V6, it's got more grunt, but I did also notice a distinct difference in the amount of engine braking that you've got. And on those long hills, I'd certainly appreciate the ability to tap into that and keep the pressure off the brakes.
Naturally, we're also pretty keen to see what this lift kit was like off-road. We ventured down to Toolungai State Forest in Victoria to tackle some tracks that you probably wouldn't really be able to get past on a regular non-lift Amarok. The lift kit takes the ground clearance from 235mm to 275mm, which is pretty impressive. For reference, the Nissan Navara Warrior tuned by Premcar has 15mm less ground clearance, and even the Ford Ranger Raptor is 3mm less. The added ground clearance was just so useful in this environment. It kept us away from nasty rocks, and the ones that it wasn't able to keep us away from were caught by that underbody protection. So it's a real great kit to get those two in the one go, I think. It's notable that when off-roading, we're able to leave the Amarok in 4 auto the whole time. That 10-speed automatic really does give you a great breadth of ability and means that you don't necessarily have to change down into low range. Essentially, that meant that we're able to go straight from some really tricky ruts and then transition straight to a fast-flowing dirt road without stopping and chucking in neutral. We also didn't have to use the rear locker during that time at all. So, it's great to see that the Amarok has that baseline good breadth of ability.
So that's the sort of stuff you're going to use for off-roading, but what about the stuff you're going to use every single day? Coming around to the back here, we've got a whole other smorgasbord of accessories, and we're going to start with the electric roller cover. Very popular accessory for people to buy. So these come standard fit on the Aventura, for example. However, on stuff like the Style, which I have with me today, and the Panamericana, it's something you might actually want to add on. So of course you have to slide it back before you can put down the tray, which I've just done. And interestingly, when you do go for this aftermarket accessory, because it's not factory fitted, you do unfortunately have a separate little button here, which I think is a little bit disappointing. With the Aventura, has it built right in. Even if you do come later and you do want that accessory, I do think they should go for the extra effort of programming it into the key. And I think this is a space where the aftermarket can perhaps pull ahead with a bit of an edge on this manufacturer design.
The roller cover itself is fairly good overall though. It's compact, has a relatively fast electric motor, and there is also a manual version if you want to save yourself a few $100.
You see, we also have a bike rack and some crossbars across the boot here. I'll put the prices for those up on screen. But pulling down the tailgate, you see that, well, not only have we got a lot of crap in the back here, but also we have an assisted tailgate. Not really something that comes standard on Amarok models. Comes standard on the D-Max, for example, but not this one. That's going to cost you about $240 from Volkswagen, but I have seen it much cheaper from some fairly reputable aftermarket accessory places for about $130. So look, give it a bit of a shop around, and as I'll keep saying today, there is something to be said for the longer manufacturer warranty. Now, for the time being, this right here is the closest thing we're going to get to Volkswagen's version of the Ford Everest, and that is an Amarok with a canopy on the back. I personally really like this accessory because it just makes so much sense. You can get stuff out of the weather and you don't have to worry about tying things down all the time. And this one, for the most part, I think is a pretty clever system. It's going to cost you between $5.5 to 6.1 grand. And look, admittedly, there are some aftermarket solutions out there which are a bit cheaper. I know ARB offers one from about $5,000, so that's something to consider. So let's have a look at this one specifically. So look down the side here, we've got a little button that we use to open up the window here. That's nice. It's nice and assisted, as is the back window as well. And we do have a variety of window options. We've got some sliding ones on the other side if you want to have your dog hanging his head out the window, and this one here, which is just a traditional swing up style. So that's very nice. I'll also note that there's a bit of a difference between the tub design of the Amarok and the Ranger. So if you do see an aftermarket solution you prefer over this one that fits the Ranger, it's unfortunately not going to fit this Amarok. So the list of accessories is actually pretty healthy at the moment, but there are still a few glaring exceptions, I think.
The first is the addition of power outlets built right into the tray, which is great for camping generally, but would also go really well with the optional slide-out fridge drawer that Volkswagen also offers.
They're also working on a second battery setup, and that's going to be both under the bonnet and also back here in the tray. I'll also note that they're working on some clear view mirror setups, which are extendable and pull out nice and so, without having to, faff around with strapping things on the outside. That should all work with the cameras and not get in the way with any of the Utes safety gubbins. Also, I should mention they're looking at some more bull bar solutions, though unfortunately it's currently really restricted to a nudge bar, and it's not really the same as a bull bar. That nudge bar does have an integrated LED light bar, which is very nice to see, but we're still lacking a full bull bar setup, and I'm not really sure when we're going to see that from Volkswagen either. ARB is already offering one that's fully integrated with Volkswagen's safety systems. I don't really see any reason why Volkswagen can't do it themselves. Now, if you do a bit of camping, one thing you've probably looked at is a rooftop tent, and Volkswagen does offer this one as another genuine accessory. It costs a bit of a $3,300, though you do need to factor in the additional cost of the roof racks. They also offer them for about $450 to $600. And I actually spent the night in this last night, and overall it was a pretty good experience. For the most part, the space inside is big enough to accommodate 2 people, I think, and there are a few amenities that do make life easier. Number one, well, it's got a ladder. How good's that? No clambering up the side of the thing, though I think that is fairly common with most rooftop tents. We've got some additional pockets on the side here. I was a little bit worried about putting anything too expensive in there in case it got nicked, but if you've got some, shower equipment and things like that you don't really care about, it's great to have it off the ground and not inside the tent with you. There's also a lighting system as well that feeds into the car that illuminates both the inside of the tent and the ground above you, so you're not falling off the ladder when you're clambering down in the middle of the night. I also appreciated the amount of ventilation that was inside this rooftop tent. We've got unzippable windows to the sides and even one on the top, so you can unzip it and not just get ventilation, but also look out at the stars above. Very nice stuff. Really, my only pain point with the rooftop tent on this one was that the mattress is just a bit too hard, I understand you've got to accommodate a wide variety of body styles, but yeah, I think that was a bit too hard for me. I'd be looking at getting a bit of a mattress topper or something like that, just to take the edge off the experience a little bit. It's also worth noting that the Amarok itself is actually designed to accommodate this sort of weight, because not all dual cabs are, unfortunately. Static load is 350 kilos and dynamic load is 85. So it does have enough weight to support yourself, your partner, and the system itself when you're camping on it at nighttime. So, it's great to see that the fundamentals are there. I think it's fair to say that buying a ute in Australia is really just the beginning. If you want to unlock its full potential and make it truly yours, the best way to do it is by going and fitting a bunch of accessories. Today we've had a look at some really good accessories, and it's great to see such a solid effort from Volkswagen on this one. That lift kit, for example, I do think is a bit of a no-brainer. Personally, if I was going to spec up one of these, I've started to become very fond of the style here, specifically the Style V6, perhaps a canopy on the back. That snorkel looks pretty hardcore too, and of course that lift kit. And as much as I like that rooftop tent, look, I think that's probably playing with fire by doing a lift with it as well, so that one could probably stay at home. Now, as much as I like championing local industry, for you, the buyer, there are some pretty notable reasons that you should go for a genuine accessory, I think, and if that accessory is indeed the best. For one, I think is just the financing. If you're going to buy one of these, it does make a lot of sense to package all that in, and depending on how desperate the salesperson is that day, you might even be able to get them to package it in with the cost of the vehicle. There's also just the warranty aspect. All of these accessories are covered by the same 5-year warranty as the rest of the vehicle. And that's a pretty lengthy extension over what a lot of aftermarket suppliers offer, some as little as just a minimum of 12 months. In the past, car makers have made a bit of a weak attempt at their accessory ranges for their vehicles. And it's for this reason that the Australian aftermarket has really flourished. So it's been really great to see that manufacturers, instead of trying to muscle in, have decided to work alongside these companies. Personally, I think that's been the best of both worlds for all of us. But look, that's just been our look at the accessory range today. Are there any that particularly strike your fancy? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. But for now, that's all. Thank you for watching Chasing Cars.